Hello everyone and welcome to the Talking Stick Show. So today I am joined by Lindsey Banks and I am joined by Rachael Hattersley. Hello, hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, hello. So we'll start with Lindsey introducing yourself. So for those listening and are new to Lindsey, tell the listeners a bit about yourself.
Hello, thank you for having me, Dale. I really appreciate this. So my name is Lindsey Banks. I work as a channeler and intuitive, as well as doing a variety of other things. I'm a YouTuber and author, you know, a variety of stuff. So I communicate with the Pleiades as well, and I share their channelings on my YouTube channel. And I have just launched an intuitive development circle as well, which is a 6-week circle, teaching people tools how to tap into their intuition.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so you've got 2 books out, have you, Lindsey? There was, yeah. So what are those called? So
my first book was called A Gentle Hug for the Soul, and that was around. It was written because I'd gone through a really dark time in my own personal life, and I wanted to share the tools that had sort of helped me to get through it. Because looking back, I was like, I could have had a nervous breakdown. Do you know what I mean? Things could have been worse. So I write about my journey and share the tools in there that can help people. It's not a very long book. I want to keep it very simple, very basic. It's only like 95 pages. And then I thought that was it, but upstairs obviously had other ideas. So my second book came out, Awaken Your Soul, and that was published last year. And that one is looking more into the spiritual journey, because I didn't realize I'd had a dark night of the soul until after I'd had it. So I wanted to share what a dark night of the soul was. I talk about awakening, I talk about channeling the Pleiadians, twin flames, soulmates, etc. And then the second half of the book is all the channelings that I received in 2019, which sort of foresaw what we are currently going through now. So yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful, and we'll go a bit more about into some of those topics today. We were talking about the twin flames on Facebook, and a lot of it's interesting what are people's perspectives on it and different views. So, Rachael, hello, my darling. Tell the listeners a bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachael, and so it's funny to know where to start with these things. A bit about myself. Well, we have a place here in southwest Scotland called Drumwell, which is a holiday and retreat space, and we were called here in 2018. I don't fully know the extent of all that I'm called here for yet, and it is evolving in an organic way. And we're co-creating with the space, with the land, with the house, with the cottage, to create a space where people can come and be themselves, and a place that lives in harmony with our full selves, and with nature, and with life in all its forms, and a place really that, for me, models a way of living that is respectful, that treats each of us and each life form with regard, and as a gift and as a celebration, and as a miracle. And yeah, it's a privilege, and it's an interesting quest, because actually I'm asking nature to show me. So I'm working totally in a way with my knowing, but without my eyes, but with my sensing, and with allowing it to show me where to go, what it requires, and in a way that's collaborative. I'm asking it to show me what it wants, and so we're kind of all growing together, which feels like a really nice thing to do.
Beautiful. And I looked at the website, and it's a very interesting place. I've been wanting to visit Scotland for a long time. I've got a really deep connection, past life connection to Scotland. The accent for me really calms me when I hear Scottish people talking. It really makes me calm and happy. And there's this track I was listening to the other day where 2 Scottish people just having a conversation, and I keep putting on because I just like listening to them talking. and there's a great area of power around Scotland, up on the spine area. There's like I'd say kind of a sacral chakra up on the actual spine of Scotland. So if you look into the history, there's a group called the Picts, Picts, and they were a group of consciousness explorers who lived on that area, and they've got connections to all the stones where they've done artwork on the stones. You can go up there and all the Pix artworks are all over the stone. So it's got a very, very deep meaning to me, Scotland. I've only visited once to Lochiel and the Ben Nevis when I was younger, but there's something about Scotland. It's so beautiful. So let's expand a little bit about Scotland. So what drew you to go to Scotland, and what were you in Scotland before? Where were you before Scotland?
Yorkshire.
Yorkshire.
Yeah. And I guess that's where I met Lindsay before. You know, we were still quite early on in our journeys, weren't we, when we first met? But yeah, I was living in Yorkshire, and I guess I'd had my wellbeing business for maybe nearly 10 years, and I had this sense I wanted to live differently. I wanted to combine my living, my work, my everything into one. And I wanted to have this sort of different way of living where I created my living from living. So it wasn't efforting in that I didn't have to go out to do something. And I don't know, we looked around Yorkshire and nothing really came. And I had this list, like long views, wide views, welcoming, a place where I can work, and a place that nourishes me, nurtures me, and creates all the futures that I'm aware of on the planet. And but I had no idea where it was going to be. And then we ended up going to see my cousin. She'd moved to near Edinburgh, and it made us think about, oh well, somewhere like this is quite pretty. It's a bit like Yorkshire, and it's got the coast, because on my list was like within an hour of mountains, because my husband's a mountain walker, within an hour of the coast because I love the sea, and within an hour of sort of some community where there's things to do and stuff. So we started to look over there after we'd been to visit her, but and we found a house and it felt right, but then things rearranged and it sort of fell through. And then Matt continued to look in the borders, and this house came up, which is in Galloway, so southwest Scotland, which is like a forgotten kingdom. People just drive past it, but it's like the most magical place. And we'd never been here. And we were like, oh, that's in the wrong place. And we just discarded it. And then one day I said, you know that house in the wrong place that looks over the loch? I think we need to go and see it. So we just came, and we drove down the lane. And when we drove down the lane, there was all these mossy rocks and trees, and it has this sort of magical, ancient, wise feel to it. And before we'd even got to the house, I'd already moved in, and it was just like, yeah. And I feel like I've come home. It's funny that you talk about, you know, a pull to Scotland, because I've never been to Galloway before. But I know I've come home on a really deep level, and I know that there's something about me that needed to come here, and almost like I've been looking for this place for many lifetimes. So I do think Scotland's got something to bring as we move into this new period of opening and living differently and communicating and communing differently. I think it just has something of that.
Beautiful. And that's the feeling I'm having at the moment, and collectively a lot of people after the lockdown. Let's talk a little bit about sacred sites, because I do feel a lot of people will have to be able to go out and have that journey where they go to a completely new place and receive the energies from the land, receive the love from the land, and go out on those pilgrimage journeys, which for me, I'm going to have to do once we're off lockdown, because hermit zone, you've got to kind of realize that we do become hermits quite easily. And for me at the moment, I'm having to every 2 weeks go for a walk with my friend Craig, just to have those social skills and interact with people. What's it been like for you, Lindsay, the lockdown 3.0? How's it changed in your world, and what's it been like?
To be honest, it's still very similar to the first lockdown. So I think so I took my children out of school in August anyway. So I'd already had that sort of initial like, oh my God, what am I doing, homeschooling sort of feel back in September. So it's like we've gradually just sort of found our way into just being every day. And, you know, I mean, our school project last week, because we're not in any school, was collecting twigs painting them, and then went and bought a glue gun, and they've spent all week doing that, making Harry Potter ones, with the idea then they're like, oh, so now we're going to sell them, you know, and create their own business. And it's like, you know, for me, that's more important, around nurturing something that they're really passionate about, than sitting at a screen for a long time. So yeah, so this lockdown hasn't really been that different. I've still been going out for walks, you know, and I've still been popping into town, you know, grabbing a coffee, like takeaway coffee, and meeting up and just having those walks. I need those interactions, you know, like you said, it's so important to be able to have those. But equally, you know, I'm quite happy at times just on my Todd, just being by myself and appreciating the non-rushing, I suppose.
Beautiful. And you went to Glastonbury. Was it over a year, just under a year now? Was that the last trip you took for the kind of the sacred journey?
Yes, it was, yeah. And I think I said this to you before. So I had that calling, like you described it, that pull. And I was like, I need to go to Glastonbury. And in my mind, I was like, I'm moving there, I'm going. And then, so I went to stay in a community down there, which was beautiful. And the kids had a fabulous time. And when I asked upstairs, I'm like, right, why am I here? I just got told, it's not about you, Lindsay. We needed your energy in this space, but now you can go back home. I was like, all right, okay, thanks.
So Rachel, so places around you, have you got many stone circles around you?
Yeah, actually, there's an amazing one, which is twin flames. So there's Cairn Holy, and it's really beautiful. And there's two circles. There's a lower circle and an upper circle, and it's quite interesting because actually last year I felt called to do more with the land, and I started a monthly group called Land Language, Let the Land Speak. And so we just gather once a month and give space for the land to speak. And also during lockdown, I joined a group called Personal Conversations with the Earth, and I started to speak with the trees here, and all these different messages started to come through. And I said, the trees want to offer some sessions. Does anybody want one in this group? And these 5 ladies came and asked for one. And since then, we've met every fortnight, and we just tune into the planet. And sometimes we work with the stones, with the circles, or we work with ancestors, or we work with bones, or we work with elements, or whatever's coming up. And we just sort of work with them and see if anything's required. So that's been a gift. But the circles are quite interesting because the bottom one feels very masculine, and it's got this clarity and this outward focus, and the top one is very much like a womb, and it draws you in and you just desire to go and sit in it. And it feels a bit funny because they've put a road in between the two, and of course that wouldn't have been there, but I've been going and doing some work, and at Sarwain I went and lit a candle in the top one and spent some time in the sort of female one, and then I went to the bottom one and lit a candle and spent some time. But I feel like the sense, and on one of our gatherings we just visualized that we lit up all the circles all around the world, and how they could come together and create this grid and light up the world and really support the future. And I think it's amazing, and there's so much wisdom. And there's a beautiful guy called Joe who's been studying this circles. He lives down the lane. Actually, he's from, I think, America, and he came here and somehow the stones called him and he's ended up staying. And like each day, each time of day, he goes and studies. And if you meet him, he will talk to you for hours about, like, if you stand here at this time, this lines up with this, and that reaches that point, and this and that point in the hill. And like, when you think about all the wisdom that went into creation of these and how they were utilized and how people lived with them and how they contributed in their daily life and in their society, I just think it's amazing. And I think there's so much for them to show us. But I also think that these stones and the trees and nature, it's like it's coming forward to support and like reparent us in a way to help us to be and to be part of the whole in a different way. So like, I'm really blown away by this area, and I guess it would have been Celtic, and it's almost part, you can see Ireland if you go to the edge of Galloway, so it's very much part of that sort of energy. But somebody said it used to be an independent kingdom, Galloway, and sometimes it would sit with the Scots and sometimes with the English, and sometimes even with the French. It would choose who it wanted to be within different things. So I thought that was quite interesting.
That's beautiful. And that it reminds me as well from you even speaking about this is how powerful the lands are and the sacred sites are for us, when we were able to kind of go into our Akashic record, our memories, and talk about your experiences from the land. I could feel the energy from you, like, and this is how potent the lands are, because they can communicate through people having experiences there. And it does raise me up and makes me feel so good when someone's talking about their experience at a sacred site, and I'm like, you can kind of feel their energy and feel what that healing's done for you, Rachel. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And Lindsay, so let's talk about your visitations. Where did you go in Glastonbury, and how did it make you feel when you visited the sites there?
So it was a bit different because I had my children with me. So it wasn't necessarily, you know, that I could sit and meditate, etc.
Yeah.
But it was beforehand. What happened was that, so the place I went to stay was a place called Pendragon House. And about a week before I went, I'd gone to get myself a new car, and I was sat in the car sales place, and there was a poster up, and I started killing myself laughing. And the guy was like, "What are you laughing at?" I said, in the corner, it just said sponsored by Pendragon. I was like, I have never heard this word before. I said, but I'm going down to Glastonbury and I'm staying in a place called Pendragon House. And now I've come in here and there's a poster which says Pendragon. I was just like, oh my God. And then, so then when I got there, I'd taken the children to is it the Abbey, the church bit, you know, in the centre. Yeah. And Rebecca Campbell, who's a famous author, she's written a book called Rise, Sister, Rise, and Light is the New Black. And it was one of the first books that I read after I got sort of gone through my dark time and moved out. And I remember reading and thinking, oh my God, this is so touching my soul. Do you know what I mean? And it was really impactful at the time, just like that calling and remembering who you are. And we were sat in these gardens, and I was having a coffee, and literally directly opposite me was Rebecca Campbell. And I was like, oh my God, kids. So I got my phone, I was like, I'm pretending to take a selfie, but I'm not. And I sent it to my friend. I was like, Rebecca Campbell sat opposite me. She was like, go and speak to her. So I went up and I spoke to her, you know, and I just said, oh, look, thank you so much for writing the book. You know, I really appreciate it and everything you did. And I was like, right, okay. Went home and I was like buzzing, you know, when you're really excited to have met someone in person. Went back to the house, and then the next day, me and the kids had gone up to Chalice Well Gardens, and that was beautiful. But like drinking the water, you know, from the fountains, the natural water and everything. And we're getting ready to leave, and basically I was just standing in the toilets waiting for the cubicle, and in walks Rebecca Campbell again. I was just like, you kind of make this up. I was like, oh, hello again. I said, it's me from yesterday, the lady who just came over and started chatting. So even though, you know, I maybe didn't feel that connection with the land or the space, you know, because I was busy with my children, I felt as if the universe was like showing me that these synchronicities are happening, do you know what I mean? And that you're meant to meet these people. And it just, yeah, so that was sort of my experience of Glastonbury.
Beautiful, Lindsay, thank you. And it's so important. It reminded me of one of my pilgrimages quite a few years ago. I went to Avebury, Glastonbury, Merlin's Cave, Wales as well. And I really recommend everyone listening now to go on your own pilgrimage and go on your own self journey, because some of the things I've experienced that they still fill me with healing, they still fill me with illumination, was when I went to Wales and we did a ceremony in this, when we were doing work on the land there was a fire phoenix which kept coming in, and we kept seeing this fire phoenix, and we're like, oh, this is something which keeps coming in the meditation circles. And we're all about to go to sleep. We woke up in the morning, and my friend said, oh, look at this lady's just sent me this crop circle in Wiltshire, this picture of this crop circle. And we were going to Wiltshire the next day, and it was of a fire phoenix, and it was like an Aztec. So there was a huge fire phoenix. I'll have to find the picture and send you it. It was like an Aztec crop circle with a huge fire phoenix in the middle with loads of different like stuff on either side. And that was like the feeling I had when I experienced that was like it was insane. And we then went to Avebury, Glastonbury, which I stayed for a day. Then we went down to Merlin's cave to Tintangle. I always get the words mixed up. And we went to Merlin's cave on the evening, and it was like the clearest night. The stars were out, everything was really bright, and I was in tears because I was walking on the beach. And when I went into that cave, there's on the right hand side, so there's two sides to Merlin Cave if you ever go. There's the right side, the left side. The right side is a place you want to go into. The left side is more the tourist area, but the right side has a portal. So when you go into the cave, it's got a huge portal on this massive stone inside, and you can really feel it. And I was in tears because it was just this connection to the earth. And it's great you two sharing your experiences, because I do feel that we are in need of this, grounding ourselves and going and feeling the earth and allowing the earth's energy to come into us and really have that experience.
Yeah, I went to Glastonbury actually last year. Yeah, I wonder if we were there this time, Lindsay. And I was kind of, I was feeling into where to go, and I climbed. I can't remember names very well, but I climbed up the hill to the top, and it was okay. But I was like, there's somewhere else I meant to go. And as we drove round, there's where the waters run, isn't there? Not the chalice well, but what's it called? The bit where the waters run. You go. You what?
I'm not very good with names. I can't remember the name.
No, I'm not very good either. But next to the Chalice Well, there's a place like an underground place, like a Victorian place, where you go in and it's dark and the natural springs run in. And I went in there and I was like blown away. It was really powerful, and some memories of something to do with my dad dying came, and I just cried and cried, and it was like the waters were so cleansing. But that place under the ground where the waters were just pouring through, there was something that felt really special and sacred about that to me. And I didn't have long because it was closing, but I definitely would like to go back there at some point and just sit and be with it. And people were taking their clothes off and swimming in the water and sitting in the water, and like I only just got a sense of what that was doing, but I would like to go and explore it more, because I know there's definitely something more in that.
Beautiful. And that's the impressions the lands give us. Like when I had those tears in the cave, was a big for me to call to me to surrender to life. I was going quite fast in my life, and I was always trying to not be perfect, but I was always trying to move too fast with everything I was doing. And when I got into that cave, it was a big realization that all is okay, and sometimes we do have to just kind of surrender and feel the ground beneath us, feel the ley line beneath us, and allow the energies to fill us. And it kind of brought back bits of trauma which I haven't dealt with. And that's one of the big things about people visiting sacred sites. They are confronted with the traumas and the sadness, if they've got any sadness in them. And it allowed me to be able to feel okay to cry, because I've got a big issue with crying. I cry when I'm speaking on shows, doing meditations, but just in normal general life, like I love when I cry, because I'm like, yes, I'm finally digging into myself, actually allowing myself to cry. So let's talk about tears, and what are your two views on tears. We'll start with Lindsay, and why crying and showing your emotion is so important.
So for me, and I never used to show any emotions. I was what I describe as like emotionally numb, even like only 3 years ago. And I suppose I felt like I was flatlining, like I couldn't remember the last time I'd like properly laughed or giggled, or the last time I'd cried. I was just numb to everything. And I remember, I think one of the first times I cried was when I was on the beach, after deciding to move out and to get divorced. And it was sort of a mixture of tears of sadness and guilt, but also like freedom and being liberated. And, I think tears are very healing. And, you know, I always say to people, if you're struggling to cry, watch the saddest movie. The Notebook is the saddest movie ever for me. And I'm like, so if you feel you need to cry, yeah, or you haven't cried in a while, watch something like that, because it will help you to release a lot of stuff. And you know, like over the last couple of years, like I've had proper sob sessions, you know, where it's like, it's just all coming out. It's like, where are these tears coming from? But like you said, you know, it's part of holding on to trauma and part of holding on to stuff that we just don't need anymore. And it's a way of just releasing that. So I like it when I have a good cry.
Rachel, how are you at crying?
I just cry all the time these days. I'm like, oh, I'm crying again. I have a sense, really. Like, I remember when my dad died and I was really quite depressed, and I didn't really access the full range of my emotions. I lost my joy and I couldn't access my joy. And there were, like a numbness, like Lindsay talks about. And I think there was a lot of tears, but they were wallowy type tears sometimes, or I couldn't really access the deep sorrow or the deep release. And now I cry often when things touch me, like when I feel this truth in something, the tears just pour because I feel like really blessed by the truth in something. And also, I don't really have much like point of view about tears. I'm like, cool, I want to cry, I'll cry. Do you know what I mean? I think it's awesome when, like children, it's just part of, they move through them. And I think as an adult, we're often taught, I remember mum saying, don't cry, you know, you'll set me off. And she didn't want to cry, so she didn't want me to cry, you know. But I think, and I recommend the same, Lindsay, find a sad film. And I remember spending months watching like Disney's and trashy things and just allowing, like, because usually after I've had a good cry, I just can't stop laughing. The giggles come because it frees up the joy, you know.
Yeah, it's so true.
And I remember going once to a movement medicine thing, and the lady there said that tribes used to, if there wasn't enough joy, they would have a grieving ceremony. And I thought, oh yeah, that's right. When there's not enough joy, we should have a grieving ceremony and cry and let it through, because then the joy naturally returns. And I think we strive for joy, and in doing so, it's a sort of outward joy, but we don't then honour the grief, because there's things to grieve for as we move through life, and there's things to step into, and it's all part of this organic nature of living. And I think we have to allow all of it in and enjoy it, like enjoy the tears, enjoy the laughter, enjoy the sorrow, enjoy the grief. It's all part of being human.
Beautiful. And that's it for me. I feel that my root of the issue of me crying was my father. I never saw him cry. I've never seen him cry in my entire life. His mum died. A few people died in our family, and I saw him, and I remember staring at him thinking, are you gonna cry? I was like, are you gonna cry and show me it's okay to cry? And he didn't cry. And from then I was like, right, I've got to hold myself in. When something happens, I've got to really hold on to this, because that's a male thing to do. So I've had to go through that realization, and that was my divine feminine really blocked within myself, trying to be too masculine, too much in the ego, if you want to call it. So yeah, it's like a breath, isn't it? When you've cried, it's like taking a really deep breath and just relaxing, allowing everything to kind of flow through you.
Yeah, and I remember somebody saying that before Victorian times, tears weren't really linked to sadness at all. And we created this link, and I don't know how true that is, but I can imagine, you know, tears are just a release, and they're just something, aren't they? They're not like, it's really good to not make them mean something. Like, I think we get bogged down by lots of things in life by making them mean something, but if they're just states to pass through, then they just are what they are, really.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rachel. And let's talk about Galactics now, because I have not talked about the galactic beings on this show just yet. I was like, I'll save it. I'll save it for later content. So let's talk about the Galactics. And now we're talking about the ley lines, the earth lines, and the Galactics have a huge part to play in our connection to the earth, our connection to the stars. So let's talk a little bit about Galactics. Lindsay, if you want to explain who the Galactics are and what their role is.
Yeah, so So the Pleiadians made themselves known to me last year. I was just doing some drawing with my daughter, and I ended up just drawing this like blue face with a pair of eyes and a nose and no mouth, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And they sort of gradually made their awareness more to me, I suppose. And so the Pleiadians they're already in that fifth dimensional consciousness, and they basically said that they're around to help us to get to that space in terms of love. So they're very much helping us to learn how to love ourselves, how to have unconditional love, etc. So they're around, and they're sort of like the next beings, if you like, in terms of consciousness to us. And then there's various other ones as well around. You've got Arcturians, you've got Syrians, you've got Lyrans, as well as a number of other beings that haven't made their awareness to me. But we've also got the Galactic Council as well, which is made up of 12 beings from different places. And like we have our laws, you know, in the UK, they have, there's laws as well, which between the Galactic Council on Earth have been made as well. So, for example, you know, one of the laws is that whatever happens like on Earth or what is going on, that as people, we are entitled to know about it. So we have to be made aware of it. And this is where sort of like movies come in, and sometimes books as well. So it's like they're sharing people are like that, yeah, they're sharing their knowledge through a way that we can sort of watch and maybe accept, rather than, you know, because some people are like, oh, it would freak me out, Lindsay, you know, if an alien started talking to me. And I'm like, it's not like ET is just going to suddenly appear in front of you, you know, and want to talk to you. I'm like, it's very different.
and that's it. It's that for me, when I was younger, the first Alien film, one of the ones that kind of did it for me. Have you ever seen Signs, the film?
Yeah.
That kind of gave a bit of a negative spin on Galactics, and the movies have done that. The positive, there's negative, so there's quite a bit of fear because of the movies. Rachel, what's your views on the Galactics? And
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not very good at things with names or labels, and I don't really see things as separate to each other. I just really get a sense of it all being part of one, and I don't really see different beings as being different to each other, or animals or nature. I just think they're all life forms that speak. So I don't categorize. I like that Lindsay explains things in words, but quite often I don't really get a sense of this being from this or this being from this. I just have a sense of this, of life and of the universe and of all things weaving. But I did have a sense. It's funny, because I've been doing some history of Drumwell, because it feels really important to understand. And there's something wise about this place, and this place I feel is a portal, or it. And I don't actually think people were supposed to live here. I think in a way it's quite hard to live here, because it's like it's so pure in a way. It doesn't understand some of the ways that humans live, and that it's weird sometimes, because like lack doesn't exist, because that's not truth. And so it has this sense of, and it wants people to do what they love when they come here. So if people try and do something that doesn't feel easy, it doesn't let them, because it's not truth. It's not contributing through for the pleasure of it. So like, but I did have a sense of a person in the shape like you described, Lindsay, like, and a sense of almost like something in the hill, because Drumwell was the name of the hill before it was the name of the house, and of something in the earth. I don't really fully know. I'm still really exploring that, but I do think what you said about films is interesting, and I've just been watching Frozen 2 for about the 6th time, and I really think when I listen to the tribe sing that song, I just can't stop crying, and there's some real wisdom. And when I look at the way she is with the ice and it brings her home to herself, there's something, and I do think it is true, there is a lot of, sometimes these days, if I find, we don't have a TV so much anymore, but if I find a film, like I watch it like 10 times, because I'm like, oh, there's a bit of wisdom in that there when she does that. Oh, and that horse that comes from the water, like, that's interesting, you know. And I think there's a depth of information, and I think I might become boring because I can do the same thing a lot of times, because I feel like there's another bit of information, another bit of information. And I do think you're right about the books and the films and how they are downloading. Everything's downloading, I feel, information to us if we let it. And I'm really curious to explore the sort of the fullness of that. Like, I just think there's so much more to it than even we understand yet, and I think that's exciting.
It's interesting, Rachel, that you said about labels. Sorry, Dale, but like, so they did say to me, they were like, "Oh, you humans like labels." Do you know what I mean? So that's why I feel there is those labels, you know. So as human beings, we can understand that concept. Do you know what I mean? That there is different sort of like beings out there, and that they have different strengths and different capabilities, etc. But yeah, they did say to me one day, they were like, "Oh, you humans like your labels, so this is why, you know, we have all these different names."
I find it challenging that things have names and labels, and actually I'm not sure I resonate so much with being human anymore. I just feel like I'm nature and I'm in a human body, but I don't resonate so much with being human in some ways. You know, I am human and I feel like I really want to embody, but I'm nature embodied and I'm life embodied, and I'm not attached to my form in the way that I used to be, you know. And I really have moved away as much as possible from labels, because I think they get us stuck, and I think we end up, if we know they're labels, they don't, but if we can make them significant, and we can make something outside of us become the power. But we are the power, like each of us, and collectively we are the power that is creation and is changing and bringing things about. And if we attach that to something outside of us, it stops us from being able to be present and create life in the way that we would like to.
Beautiful, and that reminded me of there's a book called The Book of Ra. It's basically a teaching about, it's from another universe, but it's a group called Actuarians who talk about consciousness. And it's so interesting you were saying that as well, Lindsay, about their perspective of how we like to label things, and looking at it from their perspective. They're not in Roman numeral time, they're not on a false timeline, they're not experiencing this false debt, money, blah, blah, blah. And they're in an infinite world with different timelines. They're connected to the galactic central sun, the universe. So they perceive things in oneness, instead of us when we are coming into the I am, the being of me, the being of you, the being of Lindsay. We are experiencing this kind of separation, aren't we? And to them, it's more of, when they talk about their perspective, it's more like you are saying, Rachel. It's that oneness where they are connected to every single thing in the universe, and they do not see everything as so much separation. And that's, I feel that you're trying to talk about, you're more feeling and understanding the oneness within everything.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to here, because you look out the window, you've got the loch, you've got the mountains at the back, you've got the trees, and I came to let nature show me how to live, and that's what my process has been for the last 2 years. Like, how does nature live? And like you say, time, I mean, I don't really understand time anymore, because it's not relevant. Like, it's like these things don't feel like they can fully exist here. And I don't think I ever really understood them, but I could conform to them in the best way I could when I was an analytics manager way back, you know. But really, I don't think they were ever I think it was a bit like someone showed me how to be human. So I was human for a while, and it was like, oh, okay, this is what you do to be human. You need to follow these rules, and this happens, and you get a job, and then you buy a house. Da, da, da. And now I'm like, oh, I'm just nature, you know, and so I don't need to have those concepts because they don't really contribute anything to me or to life, I don't feel, you know, or to the future that I'm aware of and want to bring into being. They don't add to that, they take away, really, in my sense. So I just don't relate to them anymore.
And that's it, what you're perceiving the time. And if you look at time and you kind of grow up and you're not actually taught what time is, and this is one of the biggest things that galactics are expressing and asking us to understand, that we have to be able to detox from time. And that's one of the most limited things we have had, which has stopped us from going on to the next stage of our consciousness evolution. Is once a Roman set up Roman numeral time, that was to put us into false timelines, so we couldn't understand we were a no-time being. That time was an illusion, and we can live in a no-time field, and we can experience an infinite universe. So once the Roman numeral time was pushed upon us as debt, as a curse, if you want to call it black magic from the system, it was to integrate us into false time, so we couldn't communicate more with our star brothers and sisters who are in a space of no time, and we're in this false creative time. Like, what's the time now? Almost 20 past 11. And it's like we're kind of like we're so on the clock, and we're perceiving this fake timeline because everyone's agreeing to this time, which is just a social agreement. That's all it is. It's you agreeing that it's 20 past 11, me agreeing, and everyone else's. But on the grand scale of things, looking at it from the galactics, looking at it from the universe, time doesn't exist, and it's something which is we need to kind of detox from.
Do you know what I did last summer? Right? So I, first of all, my kitchen clock broke, and the kids had done something to it, so the handles were just constantly on 6:30. So I was like, right, I'm not going to get a new one. I'm getting that out of my house. I was like, I don't need it. I don't really need to see what time it is. So the big clock went. And then in my car, I don't know what happened, but somehow the time was just not the right time at all. It was out by about 3 or 4 hours. So whenever I was driving anywhere, I was like, I've got no idea if I'm actually late or on time, but does it matter? No. So I was like, I will turn up when I'm meant to turn up, you know, and I'll be there when I'm meant to be. And then I got myself one of those Fitbit watches just to like help me get walking and, you know, doing a bit more exercise. And again, somehow the time's gone back by 15 minutes to what it is everywhere else. And to me, like, that just helps, like you were saying about getting out of that mind detox or the time detox. It's like, change the clocks. Do you know what I mean? So you've got no idea where it is. Take them out of your visible sight, because if you're constantly watching the clock, it does make time just like, you know, it changes things like how you feel and what you're up to. Whereas if you're like, oh, you know what, I feel hungry now, you know, so rather than saying like every day, right, I'm having my lunch at 12 o'clock. If you're not hungry, why are you eating? Yeah. Eat when you feel like you're hungry, you know, go to bed when you feel tired. And it's about getting back in tune with your own body clock, isn't it, as well?
Beautiful.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it is about our own rhythms, isn't it? Like, I think we've used time as a way to abuse ourselves, really, to make ourselves perform to something that actually is affecting our health and well-being, because we use it to make ourselves feel under pressure to do something to someone else's requirements. And actually, you know, we don't really have clocks, and like, what time is it? It's now, you know, that is what time it is. And sometimes I have to say to people, oh, Rachel time doesn't work like that, you know. Sorry, I can't agree to that, because that's not how Rachel time works, you know. But actually, and sometimes at first I felt bad, but actually it's like, well, I know when it feels right to be somewhere and do something, and if it doesn't, and I make myself, then I'm being really unkind to myself. And actually, I don't want to treat myself that way anymore. It feels important, because if I treat myself unkindly, then I'm treating the world unkindly, and that's not what I want to show up as. And so therefore I must follow my own time and my own rhythm, and respect others, and tune into them and know that, oh yeah, that's the time when that's meant to happen, but from intuition, not from a clock.
And do you imagine if we didn't have time, how long we'd live till, how different we'd live, how different we'd look, and we'd probably live a hell of a lot longer. Because it's all you're given that you're going to 90, 100, 110, and that's old, you're gonna die, and that's imprinted upon us, and you're on that time scale of like, right now I'm going through my 30s, my 40s and 50s, and you're putting all this expectation and judgment on yourself, and it's kind of like soul trauma in a sense, that they're making us not be aware of who we really are, and that time doesn't exist, and we have an infinite amount of time to do anything we want.
Wow, that's interesting the way you say that. I have some other things I'll need to take away and percolate from that. Thank you.
And that's the thing for me, was fire ceremony was for me where when I call in the protection, I always say, well, majority of the time I'll say that I'm stepping now into a no time field where I'm not accepting your karma or drama Roman numeral time. I'm not allowing you to perceive me, and I'm stepping into a 0 point function where you're in a no time field, and everyone can empower themselves and do it in a meditation. Tell your body, I'm going into a no time field and I'm not attaching to Roman numeral time. And have you ever had, Lindsay and Rachel, where you've had a meditation or a ceremony and you think it's like 10 minutes, but it's been an hour, or it's been an hour and it's been 10 minutes, and you come out of it and you're like, hang on a minute, my time doesn't match up to what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's what life's like at Drumwell most of the time, to be honest. Galloway seems to have its own time. When we got here, we were like, oh, like Galloway's got its own time zone, and it just like, you can't, like, if you're trying to get tradesmen and stuff, you're like, oh, it'll happen on Galloway time. Like, it's really funny. And my husband was born in Africa, actually, and his mum always used to say to me, he was worked on manana time, and I think it probably suits him quite well, really.
That's nice. And so let's talk a little bit about, so you speaking regularly to Galactics, the Pleiadians, Lindsay. What have you had kind of about this process of the COVID and the situation? What have they been saying, and kind of what's going on that front?
So they've been basically, where do I start with this? So what is happening is meant to happen now. So they shared with me that, back in the 60s, that was the idea, behind sort of like free love and, the hippie movement and everything else. It's like there was a timeline where we were meant to ascend back in the 60s, and there was a being called Ashtar, who was coming through to quite a lot of psychics and mediums back then, saying, right, you're in this process of ascension, this is what's going to happen, etc. And they shared with the world, like, this is what Ashtar is saying to us, and it never came to fruition. So they were like mocked and laughed at, etc. And I was doing some journaling a few weeks ago, and Ashtar had come through to myself, and he said, right, this time you are ascending. So, the planet is ascending, and we're in that right space, and we're going forward. We are moving towards fifth dimensional consciousness. And they're just, whenever they come through, they're bringing through messages of hope and light, and they're just asking for those who are feeling in that place of love rather than fear, to just keep sharing, that sort of like your thoughts, and, interacting with others is really important as well. Like, I don't know about you, but like, whenever I see anyone on walks, I speak to everyone. So yesterday, I'd gone out for a walk in my village, and there was this lovely family, and I could hear them laughing so much. It was a mum and her 3 children. A mum and 3 children. And as they walked past me, I just said to them, I said, how beautiful, I said, is that to hear your children laughing? I says, it's so nice to hear laughter outside. And I said I spoke to a lady the other day. I was sat on the park bench, and I was like, oh, hello. And she was like, do I know you? I was like, no, I'm just passing the time of day with you, and I just want to say hello, and I hope you're having a beautiful day. And she's like, oh, thank you very much. And those what seem like tiny interactions, which can have a massive impact on people, you know, because they can go away feeling a bit lighter, feeling like someone cares enough to speak to me and say hello. Do you know what I mean?
Beautiful.
So yeah, so basically we're ascending, we're on the right timeline, we're going where we're meant to be going. And you know, they do understand that there are many struggling at the moment. And they are around, like many of us, you know, it's not just me that they're coming to speak to. They're around many people at the minute. It's just whether we can allow them, you know, to come in and to feel their love and their light, etc.
And it's interesting you say about the 60s, because I was listening all about the 60s and 70s. If you go back, there was marches in the 60s. So basically my view on it is that it's an individual awakening, that it's not a collective awakening. It's everyone in their individual time on their own when they're ready. It's not going to be everyone's going to ascend at one point. It's a service to self-ascension is probably the best way to say it. And it's so interesting you say that, Lindsay, because the information I was listening and listening to was that all about the 60s. There was a huge march, and if you look back, and there was millions and millions and millions of people marching in the 60s and 70s, and that was so close to being the end, but it didn't happen. And what they tried to do is they tried to label it as a hippie movement. So they didn't want to give you the truth about it was actually the heart awakening zone where everyone's heart was awakening, drugs, no drugs. Everyone was feeling expressed love towards each other, and everyone started to march against the system of domination control and say, I'm not having this shit anymore. And it almost happened. And so it's been pushed and shrugged to be the drug generation. The 60s are loads of hippies, man, and they were just taking LSD and having a good time. But on the truth of it, that they almost created the end of everything because of the movement of going through. And it's so beautiful you to say that we are at the end timeline, where this is the graduation timeline. This is a lifetime where at some point we're going to see some crazy, more crazy shit in the forms of COVID, all sorts of weird shit going on in the future. And it's great to be able to share these shows with both of you and communicate and have, just share this space. So thank you both for coming on.
Thank you. Can I just say one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah.
Just if someone's watching this and like, oh my God, what do you mean it's the end of like the time? I don't know.
It's the end of the world, and we know it.
But I think what sort of helped me as well is by having that like connection with upstairs, and you know, they've shared with me so many times. It's like actually it was William Shakespeare who first came along and was like, you know, all the world is a stage and we are merely players. And it's like remembering that what we are watching play out, it's just like a massive drama. It's like watching Bridgerton. I think I haven't seen that, but
season 2's on at the moment with the new president. There's season 3 next year, season 4.
Exactly. It's like and that's all we're seeing at the minute. Like what all these events that are happening in the world, it's like watching a Netflix program or a drama. So just remind yourself, you know, if you're in the audience, you know, you don't have to participate in it. You know, you don't have to go into it. You can just stay on the outside and observe and just watch what's happening.
Beautiful. And Rachel, have you got anything to share from listening to that before we say goodbye today?
A few things. I'm just trying to place them. Like, so the trees have got something to say. So in a minute, I might say something from the trees. But yes, like from what Lindsay said, you know, find your center, do what you can to take care of yourself, connect with nature or upstairs or downstairs or anything that brings you a sense of feeling part of something else than just a drama. And just that life is taking care of us. Like, it knows, it's not stupid, it's not some random thing, you know, there's wisdom to life, and life is benevolent, and it cares for us, and it wants us to flourish. And you know, I think it's really important to remember that life wants us to flourish, and life is on our side. And I see a lot of polarity and people fighting against things, you know, but actually try not to get involved in the polarity, try not to take a side, and just try to go, well, there's an infinite spectrum of possibilities, and I'm going to hold a space of infinite possibilities. And like Lindsay said, you know, where can you be the joy and the light and the contribution to what it is that you want to move towards? And don't underestimate that what you do as a person is impacting what's happening as a whole. Like, if you choose drama, then you're contributing to drama. And if you choose to stay centered and to create something clear and open and trusting, then that's what you're contributing to. And so I think it's time for us to take responsibility for our own actions and to make sure that we are happy with the actions that we're taking and what that's contributing to. So that's like the first thing. And the tree, like nature's quite, I find it quite interesting because when it talks, it's quite direct, and sometimes I still find it a bit weird, but like to yield, like I feel like they're showing me that it's time to embody our spirits fully, to bring them into our bodies and onto earth, and to move as consciousness, but in a body and in a pleasurable, organic, intuitive, enjoyable like essence, which is what we are. Like, let's not forget that that's what we are, embodied spirit that is infinite and has choices, you know. And sit with a tree, hug a tree, put your back against a tree, make friends with a tree. Like, the trees really have a lot to bring, and they've been here a lot longer than us, so they don't have this sense of short time that we do. Like, there's a guy called King Oak, and I go and sit with him, and he's like showing me about leadership and how things can interact and how he cares for his flock and different things. So like, learn from something that's a bit, I don't know, I was going to say a bit brighter, but you know, a bit more holistic in its outlook, wherever you can, because like, it will all contribute.
Beautiful, and that's so interesting you say that, because I did a ceremony online, a ritual online yesterday, and one of the feeling I got when I was connecting to the east and the west was one of the biggest part for us to play is, like you say, the trees were speaking and saying being fully present in your body is one of the most important things we can do to move forward, to be healthy, to be balanced, and to stay grounded. It's so important. And for me, it's helped me move forward so much, to be able to feel my body, feel my legs, feel myself in my skin, grounded to the earth. And that's so interesting that you're saying about the trees are that's their message for us, is to be here, grounded into the earth as we go through the change, and making sure we are present, our spirits are here instead of always out, we are present here, kind of sharing the frequency of love.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Beautiful. And yeah, it's an absolute honor to have you both on. I had something else to say then, but you just conflict. I was about to say something else, but then I said something. So before we go, if Lindsay and Rachel, so Lindsay, how can people get hold of you for sessions and all your content?
Yes, so I'm over on YouTube, Lindsey Banks, and my website is lindseybanks.com. I'm on Instagram, Lindsey Banks 111. And if you just search Lindsey Banks, there's various, like, you'll find my book, you'll find various articles that have been written, you know, etc. So yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. And Rachel, how can people get a hold of you?
We have a website, which is drumwill.com, and you spell that DRUM, drum, WHILL, drumwill in Scottish. And also on Facebook, and I'm Rachael Hattersley if you want to get in touch with me personally. And I have a YouTube called Drumwill Retreat, which has got some meditations and some sessions about communicating with trees, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And also, if anybody wants to gather once a month to hold space for the land and to see what comes in, then I've made a little group called Land Language, Let the Land Speak, on Facebook, and I just share the Zoom. It's a free thing. There are people coming from all over the planet, from Australia, America, and it just feels really nice to hold space for the planet together. So if anybody's drawn to that, then you're very welcome to come.
Beautiful. And I've been doing a lot of dowsing around the area at the moment, and got my dowsing rods out to really find loads of different ley lines and energies. So yeah, I just like to say I've really enjoyed this show. It's so nice to have a flow of different perspectives, and I really honor that both of your perspectives is unique and different. And it's so nice to be able to listen, and you be able to share your space, me be able to share your space in non-competition, non-hierarchical order, but in a true love way. So thank you both for joining the show, and thank you everyone
Thank you.
for watching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Rachel. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.